My name is Adam, and I'm from Texas. Where I come from, we live by a simple philosophy: go big or go home. That motto feels like it's etched into my DNA, the driving force of my life. I've always believed I was a natural-born winner, the smart guy who could read the table and see the trends before anyone else. This confidence was once my most valuable asset. It got me out of the Texas dust and into the glamour of Los Angeles. But I would later learn that this very confidence was nothing but the most expensive sacrifice destiny had in store for me. In Los Angeles, I once thought I was the king of the city of angels. I was 26, in the prime of my life. I didn't chase a Hollywood dream. Instead, with that Texan grit, I carved out a niche for myself in the world of streetwear e-commerce. My online store specialized in flipping limited edition sneakers and streetwear, Supreme box logo tees, the latest Yeezy colorways. They were all my prey. I vividly remember waking up at 4 a.m., using 3 different IP addresses and 5 bot accounts to snatch up a pair of limited release Nikes. The thrill of beating out hundreds of thousands of competitors worldwide made me feel like the master of the digital universe. My apartment was in Silver Lake, a place brimming with creativity, the aroma of coffee, and idealism. Every morning, sunlight would stream through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating my meticulously cared-for plants and the rows of priceless trophies on my collection wall. My life, like the brands I sold, was glossy, expensive, and filled with enviable symbols. A net profit of $7,000 to $8,000 a month meant I could book a table at the best restaurants in Santa Monica without a second thought and drive a used BMW Z4 down the Pacific Coast Highway, chasing sunsets. I thought this was the life I had won with my smarts. I thought I would always be the winner. I loved the feeling of being in control. From inventory management and cash flow to every last like and comment on social media, I had my finger on the pulse. I was proud of the business empire I had built, even if it was just a virtual store on the internet. It was proof of my abilities, a medal for escaping my small Texas town and making it in LA. My friends called me Boss Adam, and I reveled in their admiration for my freedom and income. Looking back, that obsession with control was the very thing that foreshadowed me losing it. I thought I was in control of my life, oblivious to the fact that a bigger, unseen dealer had already marked me as the next target. The road to hell is often paved with well-intentioned invitations and trivial bits of luck. My nightmare began in a WhatsApp group called Soul Grail. It was a gathering of sneaker flippers and enthusiasts like me. We spent our days exchanging release info, mocking the newbies who couldn't cop, and occasionally flexing our latest acquisitions. The group was loud, overflowing with testosterone, and everyone was trying to prove they were stronger, faster, and smarter than the next guy. One day, a member named Mike, who was known for his inside scoops and shady connections, dropped a link in the chat. "Boys, flipping sneakers is too much work," he wrote casually. "How about something easier? Online Texas Hold'em. Games are running 24/7. At first I scoffed. Gambling? That's a loser's game. I made my money with business acumen and hard work, not some vague notion of luck. But Mike, as if reading my mind, sent me a private message. "Adam, this isn't luck. It's skill and psychological warfare. You're a beast at the sneaker game. You'll be a natural at this. The logic is the same." Skill and psychological warfare. Those words hit the bullseye of my ego. My smarts, I figured, could crack any system, including poker. With a sense of scrutiny and challenge, I clicked the link. The website was flashy, designed with blinking neon effects and realistic chip sounds that created a Las Vegas vibe. "I'm just researching," I told myself, "just checking out how it works." I created an account with the username Texas Hold'em King. I cautiously deposited $100 with my credit card, the cost of lunch, nothing more. I treated it as research funding. I joined a beginner's table where players had avatars ranging from cartoon characters to beautiful women, and their usernames were just as random. I'll never forget the first hand. I was dealt 2 aces, the best starting hand in Texas Hold'em. My heart beat a little faster, but mostly I felt a sense of destiny, as if it was meant to be. I called calmly, luring my opponents to bet. When the flop came and I hit 3 of a kind, I almost laughed out loud. I went all in. A player named Lucky Dog 88 called me, managed to scrape together a small straight on the river, but was ultimately crushed by my 3 aces. On the screen, a mountain of virtual chips flooded from his avatar to mine. My balance jumped from a few dozen dollars to over 300 in an instant. The feeling, how do I describe it? It was more direct, more intense than snagging a pair of limited edition sneakers or closing a big sale. It was a pure, undiluted victory, free of any sweat or labor. I didn't sleep that night. In 5 hours, I turned that $100 of research funding into $1,000. When my withdrawal request was approved and $1,000 in actual cash landed in my bank account, my entire worldview was turned upside down. The money I had earned from pulling all-nighters, studying the market, and packing boxes felt like it was seasoned with the salt of my own sweat. But this $1,000 was like a gift from the heavens, sweet and effortless. Lying in bed, my ceiling transformed into a giant screen scrolling with thrilling numbers. A crazy idea took root in my mind. If I could work like this for a few hours every day and consistently win a few $100s, that would be over $100,000 a year in net profit. I even started calculating how this passive income could help me expand my sneaker business, hire people, and achieve true financial freedom. I naively believed I had discovered an ATM with an infinite cash supply. I thought I had found the rabbit hole in the digital world, and that I was the one and only Alice who could control it all. I didn't realize I wasn't Alice. I was just a rabbit, lured by a carrot, hopping step by step into a trap. We're not scared of you winning, we're scared of you not showing up. That old casino proverb, like a cold curse, soon came true for me. For the first month, it was as if Lady Luck herself was on my side. I was on a hot streak, and the numbers in my account kept climbing. I won over $20,000. I started to spend lavishly, buying myself a Rolex Submariner to reward my talent. I even began to look down on my sneaker business, feeling that its profits were an insult to my time. I spent far more hours studying poker strategy than managing my store. But good luck doesn't last forever, especially in a virtual world governed by precise algorithms. The turning point came without warning. I started losing, small amounts at first, a few $100s. I told myself it was just normal variance. But soon, the frequency and size of my losses grew. I discovered that I lost money far faster than I won it. Winning required me to be cautious and strategic, grinding through dozens of hands to build a small profit. But losing? Losing often took just one hand, one impulsive all-in, to wipe out hours of effort. My mindset completely deteriorated. Every loss felt like a gash in my heart, and the only painkiller was to win it back immediately. I started chasing my losses. The game was no longer fun. My mind was consumed by a single thought: break even. This made my playstyle impatient and reckless. I would bluff with terrible cards and call bets with no chance of winning, simply because I couldn't stand to fold and lose what I'd already put in the pot. I remember one Tuesday afternoon. The Los Angeles sun was painfully bright, but I was locked in my dark room, eyes bloodshot, staring at the screen. After losing several big hands in a row, my account was down to less than $5,000. I told myself this was the last shot, win it back and walk away. That hand, I was dealt ace-king. A strong hand. I raised, and 3 players called. The flop came a K7 with 2 spades. I had hit top 2 pair. My odds of winning were huge. I could almost hear my heart pounding in my chest. This was the perfect comeback opportunity. I made a heavy bet. One opponent called. The turn was an irrelevant diamond. I bet again, and he called again. Then came the river, the final card. It was a spade. My heart sank. A flush was now possible on the board. But my top 2 pair was still a very strong hand, and I had already invested so much. Fold? No, I couldn't. My gambler's brain started feeding me excuses. He probably doesn't have the flush. He's bluffing. He's just trying to scare me off the pot. I went all in. My opponent, with the username RiverRat, called instantly. He showed his cards, 2 low spades. With a worthless 7 and an insignificant 3, he had hit his flush on the river. In that moment, it felt like the entire world went silent. On the screen, all my chips, my last $5,000, were swept away by a virtual rake, coldly and slowly, to his side of the table. I stared at the glaring text, account balance, $0, and my mind went blank. I didn't stop there. I grabbed my credit card and reloaded. $10,000. I thought, just one hand, just one good hand, and I can win it all back. But what awaited me was another slaughter. In the next few hours, that $10,000 disappeared. Then came the second credit card, and the third. The most terrifying thing about online gambling is its convenience. It's not like a real casino where, if you go broke, you at least have the time it takes to walk to an ATM to cool down. Online, your bank account, your entire net worth, is just a number on a screen. Increasing or decreasing it takes only a single click. It completely blurs the concept of money. You're no longer losing dollars earned through hard work. You're losing a string of cold, emotionless digits. It took only a year to fall from the clouds to the abyss. That year, I was like a man possessed. During the day, I had no heart for my business, letting customer emails pile up and my store's ratings plummet. At night, I would lock myself in my room, waging one smokeless war after another against virtual opponents on a screen. I lost all my savings, then started selling off my trophies. The Rolex that symbolized my talent was sold to a second-hand dealer for 30% below market value. The prized sneakers on my wall were listed online and sold at a discount, one by one. When I had nothing left to sell, I set my sights on my Silver Lake apartment. I took out a home equity loan, pulling $100,000 in cash from the property. I lied to myself, calling it my final bullet, my comeback fund. But that money, like ice thrown into a furnace, evaporated in less than a month. Next came the online loans. The apps that promised quick approval, instant cash, became my last resort. The interest rates were astronomical, but I didn't care. I just wanted money to get back to the table and win back everything that was mine. I started robbing Peter to pay Paul, taking out loans from one platform to cover the interest on another. My phone was blown up by debt collectors daily, and my inbox was filled with stern warning letters. Ultimately, I lost everything. My sneaker store went bankrupt from neglect. My apartment was foreclosed on by the bank. My credit cards were all maxed out. I went from being the king of LA, with a six-figure income, to a homeless man saddled with over $150,000 in debt. I had lost more than just money. I had lost my once proud confidence, my career, my home, and everything I had built in Los Angeles. All told, the total damage, my business, savings, assets, plus the debt, came to a staggering $350,000. I clearly remember that afternoon, dragging a suitcase, standing below my former apartment building. I looked up at the window I could no longer enter. The LA sun was still brilliant, but on my skin, it felt like it had no warmth at all. I had become the city's ultimate failure. With nowhere else to go, I swallowed my pride and called my family. The moment the call connected and I heard my mother's worried voice, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I broke down and sobbed like a child. I confessed everything. The long silence on the other end of the line was more heartbreaking than any scolding could have been. In that moment, I was forced into sobriety. Not because I had an epiphany, but because I had truly hit rock bottom. I couldn't borrow another cent. I had nothing left to wager. My career as a gambler was brought to a screeching, humiliating halt. At the absolute zero of my life, I met Sarah. With my family's help, I handled the most urgent of my debts and returned to Los Angeles. I couldn't just run back to Texas. I had to get back up right here, in the place where I fell. I rented a tiny studio in Koreatown and began the long road of repayment. I stomped all over my pride and ego and took an entry-level sales job at a tech company. The job was both a form of torture and a form of salvation. Making 100 cold calls a day, facing endless rejections and indifference, reminded me of the despair of calling bets at the poker table, waiting for a good card that never came. But the difference was, after every rejection, I could just make the next call. Every failure was building experience towards success. I channeled all of that damn, stubborn gambler's energy into my work. I studied the product, analyzed customer psychology, and practiced my scripts with the same obsessive fanaticism I once had for poker strategy. Sarah was a marketing assistant at the company, a quiet, kind girl. She wasn't like the flashy women I had met before in LA. She dressed simply, never wore heavy makeup, and always had a gentle smile. Our first interaction was when I needed a customer data report that she was in charge of. I was impatient when I approached her, but she didn't mind, patiently helping me find everything I needed. We slowly got to know each other. She seemed curious about the workaholic I had become. One day, we ran into each other in the break room. She handed me a cup of coffee and said softly, "Adam, you don't have to be so hard on yourself. You're already doing a great job." Those simple words shattered all my defenses. During that time, I was like a wounded animal, using ruthless work to hide my inner shame and scars. But her words were like a warm light, piercing through the darkness that had frozen my soul. We started dating. On our first official dinner date, I decided to tell her everything. I didn't want to deceive her, especially not after living through so many lies. I told her my entire story, from my glory days to my downfall, holding nothing back. I told her how much money I had lost and how much debt I was still carrying. When I finished, I lowered my head, afraid to look her in the eyes, and waited for her judgment. The person you're getting to know, I said, my voice nearly trembling, is at the absolute worst, most pathetic point in his life. She was quiet for a long time. Then she reached out and took my cold hand, which was resting on the table. Adam, she said, that's your past. The person I know is the one who works hard every day, trying to start over, who hasn't made mistakes. What's important is that you're on the right path now. In that moment, I felt redeemed. She didn't look down on me, she didn't judge me. She chose to believe in me, to believe in my future. With Sarah's companionship and encouragement, my life truly began to get back on track. I became the top salesman at the company. My monthly income climbed from $10,000 to over $20,000. For more than a year, I lived like an ascetic and paid off every single one of my debts. The day we made the final payment on the last online loan, I held Sarah and cried like a baby. It was the first time in my life I had felt a true, profound sense of relief. I stayed away from gambling for 3 full years. Those 3 years were the calmest and happiest of my life. People say a prodigal son's return is more precious than gold, but they forget to mention that the devil's genes might still be lurking in his bones. Once the time is right, they reawaken. After clearing my debts, life with Sarah just got better. We moved into a nicer, more spacious apartment. I started to regain my confidence, but this time, I thought it was a healthy confidence. I was still a star salesman at the tech company, but the stable, quiet life slowly began to feel dull. That go big Texan gene in my blood started to itch again. An opportunity arose in 2023. I and 2 other top salesmen from my company, Chris and Leo, decided to quit and start our own business. We saw huge potential in the health supplement market, especially products targeting high-stress individuals, marketed as all-natural and energy-boosting. Using our sales skills and network, we launched our own brand. It was like fate was smiling on us again. Our product was an instant success, thanks to precise market positioning and a relentless marketing blitz. We blew up the market through social media, influencer partnerships, and multi-level distribution. Wealth flooded in at a speed I had never seen before. In just 6 months, the 3 of us partners had each cleared over $200,000 in profit. I had money again, more than ever before. I bought a brand new Porsche 911. I took Sarah on a trip to Europe, staying in the most luxurious hotels. I once again felt like that invincible king. But this success was far more toxic. It didn't just bring wealth, it brought an all-consuming arrogance. I started to think that my comeback was entirely due to my own abilities. I forgot the days of struggling at rock bottom. I forgot how Sarah had pulled me out of my darkest despair. I started to think that Sarah was just lucky to have met me before I made it big. Success and money are the best magnifying glasses. They illuminate the deepest sense of superiority and the ugliest parts of your character for all to see. With a fortune in my hands, my mindset underwent a subtle but fatal shift. I started to feel that Sarah was beneath me. She was still the same kind, simple girl, but in my eyes, her simplicity had become plainness. She didn't understand the business models I talked about or why I would spend thousands on a suit. We had less and less to talk about. I would take her to business parties, where she always seemed reserved and uncomfortable. Meanwhile, the young, beautiful women at my company would look at me with adoring eyes and giggle at every one of my brilliant insights. To my shame, I began to enjoy that feeling of being idolized, while Sarah's presence felt like a reminder of my disgraceful past. I felt like taking her out was bad for my image. So, I started picking fights. I would fly into a rage if her cooking was a little too salty, or berate her for not replying to my texts immediately. I used the cruelest words I could think of to attack the girl who had once saved me. I was pushing her to leave. The night we broke up, the air in the apartment we had decorated together was as cold as a freezer. "Sarah, we're not right for each other," I said, in a cold tone I had rehearsed countless times. "We want different things in life." Her eyes were red as she looked at me, full of confusion and pain. "Adam, what went wrong? We can talk about it. We can fix it." "Nothing's wrong," I cut her off cruelly. "The problem is that I've gone too far, and you're still standing in the same place." She finally understood. Tears streamed down her face, but her gaze turned firm and cold. It was a look I had never seen before, one filled with disappointment and dignity. The next day, as she was packing her things, I handed her a check for $10,000. "Take this," I said in a condescending tone, "as a little compensation for your time over the years." She looked at the check, then at me, and suddenly laughed. It was a laugh full of sorrow and contempt. "Adam, do you really think money can solve everything? You think this is compensation for what I gave?" I was with you back then not because I thought you'd be rich one day. I was in love with the man who had nothing, but was trying his best to live. It seems that man is dead. She didn't take the check. She tore it in half, threw it on the table, and walked out with her suitcase without a single look back. The moment the door clicked shut, I didn't feel relief. I felt a wave of unprecedented panic. But I quickly suppressed it with thoughts like, I'm free. I can find a prettier woman who's more on my level. I thought my future would be smooth sailing from then on. But fate's script had already written the next chapter. Our supplement business, due to rapid overexpansion, couldn't keep up with customer service and product development. Combined with increasing market competition, our reputation plummeted. Complaints flooded in, and sales fell off a cliff. In less than a year, the company that had made us rich overnight went bankrupt. After the company collapsed, I still had a few $100,000 in savings. With no job to tie me down, my days consisted of driving my Porsche around LA, aimlessly drifting. A vast emptiness and a sense of failure washed over me like a tide. And that's when the devil of gambling called to me once more. This time, I didn't touch online poker. The trauma from that experience was too deep. I started frequenting underground, real-life poker games in Los Angeles. These games were even more seductive than their online counterparts. They were held in mansions in the Hollywood Hills or penthouses in downtown high-rises. You could smell the expensive cigars, hear the crisp clink of ice in whiskey glasses. At the table sat has been movie stars, sleazy producers, and young guys like me who had made quick cash on some trend. Here, gambling wasn't just gambling, it was a social event, a status symbol. Playing for small stakes would get you laughed out of the room. The blinds started at $500 and went up with no ceiling. I was hooked immediately. The live games satisfied my desire for control and performance in a way the internet never could. I could see my opponent's micro-expressions and win pots through sheer bravado. That feeling of conquest was so much more real than just clicking a mouse. I drifted from game to game, living for the adrenaline rush. I won, and I lost, but overall, my savings were dwindling at a slow but steady pace. I told myself it was just entertainment, a social expense. Until I met Marco. Marco was introduced to me by a fellow player. He was suave and well-spoken, claiming to be a venture capitalist. He lavished praise on my business acumen, making me feel like I'd met a kindred spirit. One day, he invited me to a more exclusive game, saying the players were more interesting and the stakes were much higher. I agreed without hesitation, and that was the beginning of the longest, darkest night of my life.